All right, thank you so much for returning. I hope you are enjoying the readings of Dr. Myles Munroe. We are reading Understanding the Purpose and Power of Woman, a book for women and the men who love them. We are on Chapter 9, Understanding the Woman's Communication Style. I think this chapter will be most beneficial to everyone. And here we are. I've seen too much not to know that the impression of a woman may be more valuable than the conclusion of an analytical reasoner, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, as Sherlock Holmes. God made women and men very different from each other in the way they think, act, and respond. These differences were designed to be complementary and not divisive. Adam and Eve originally lived in harmony with God, and so they were able to live in harmony with one another. They knew how to draw on each other's strengths in communication for the betterment of them both. However, when humanity turned away from God's purposes and broke relationship with Him, the lines of communication between males and females were cut, or at least badly frayed. Thus, the differences that were originally designed to correspond to one another now often lead to misunderstandings and conflicts in marriage and in other relationships between men and women. The chances are very good that you have experienced some of this misunderstanding and conflict firsthand. Handling differences of opinion and avoiding discord are common problems in relationships. Consequently, how should you conduct yourself when you have been created to function differently from others with whom you live and work? How are you to live harmoniously with a husband or wife whom you love, but who processes information and responds in a manner that is totally distinct from the way that you do? How do you make yourself understood, and how do you communicate effectively? Most of all, how do you keep from trying to control another person or driving a wedge between yourself and others because of these differences? Many women and men struggle with these issues. The answer is to understand the purposes and designs of females and males that influence their communication styles. With this knowledge and some patience and forgiveness, females and males who are seeking God's redemptive purposes for their lives can communicate with one another effectively and happily. Perhaps Colossians 3:13 would be a good guiding principle for us as we deal with differences in communication. Bear with each other and forgive whatever grievances you may have against one another. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. When women and men are considerate with one another, they have the basis on which they can develop the mutual love and respect that is crucial to lasting relationships. Let us now look at the female's communication style and contrast it with the male's style so that their different perspectives can be understood and appreciated. In this way, they may be brought into the complementary balance that was God's original purpose for them. This balance will be achieved when females and males understand the strengths of each communication style and when they learn to communicate with each other according to the style that the other party can receive and understand. The following are the basic natures and tendencies of females and males in communication. Of course, there will always be exceptions depending on the individual. Yet within the variations, the general tendencies usually hold true. The woman is an emotional feeler. God made the woman primarily as an emotional feeler, while He made the man chiefly as a logical thinker. First, let's define these terms. When I say that a woman is an emotional feeler, I am referring to the way in which she processes and thinks about the verbal and nonverbal communication she receives and perceives from the world around her. Because the woman is an incubator, she not only receives thoughts and ideas into her being, but also transforms them as she processes them in her emotional, mental, and spiritual wombs. Her communication style reflects this process. When a woman receives information, she assesses it both mentally and emotionally at the same time. This is what makes her distinct from the male, who generally uses these functions separately. Why is this so? Again, purpose determines design. God's creation is remarkable. He actually designed the brains of females and males to be different. The neural pathways between the left and right hemispheres of a woman's brain, both the logical and the emotional sides, are intact. This explains what often puzzles many men: how women are able to do multiple tasks at the same time, rather than having to focus on just one. The woman's brain allows her to process facts and feelings almost simultaneously. Her emotions are with her all the time. She is thinking, and this influences her perspective on the world around her, as well as what is communicated to her. In contrast, there are fewer nerves connecting the two hemispheres of the male's brain, so that the logical and emotional sides are not as closely connected. Because of this, he basically needs to shift gears to move from his dominant logical side to his emotional side. This is why men in general think in terms of facts and in a linear fashion. They think like a straight line, the shortest distance between 2 points, which gives them the ability to see the goal, the vision, and to focus their energies on reaching it in the most straightforward and direct way. Women, on the other hand, tend to think more like a grid than a straight line. A woman's brain is designed to pick up many details that men don't see, things that go beyond the mere facts, such as the personalities, motivations, and feelings of both herself and others. She can perceive, analyze, evaluate, and see relationships between things all at the same time, like X, Y, and Z coordinates on a grid track, a multiple of factors at the same time. No one person and no one gender can look at the world with complete perspective. Therefore, God has designed things so that when the female man and the male man work together in unity, they can help one another to see a more balanced picture of life. They weren't meant to understand the world and fulfill their dominion mandate in isolation from one another. For this reason, they have built-in ways of seeing the world that are of benefit to each other. God designed the woman to look at life through an emotional filter and the man to look at life through a logical filter. This doesn't mean that women do not use logic or that men do not have emotions. They each just have a specific way of looking at the world. The woman can help the man see aspects of life which, if overlooked or ignored, can become detours or potholes, preventing him from reaching his goal or from reaching it as quickly as he might have. Her peripheral vision keeps him from being blindsided as he single-mindedly pursues his goals and objectives. On the other hand, the man's linear thinking helps the woman not to become so enmeshed in the many layers of her multidimensional thinking that she loses sight of the goal and never reaches it. Women and men need each other to chart the best course in life, one that enables them to reach their common goal, but also experience their journey in the fullest, wisest, and most rewarding way possible. Women often have been written off as foolish and inferior by men because they are expressive and show their emotions. A woman does not need to apologize for her emotions. God made her to feel. males have assumed that their approach is better than the female's approach, rather than complementary to it. They haven't known or understood how and why the woman was created to be an emotional feeler. Feeling and thinking. What communication between women and men comes down to is feeling, thinking, and self-expression. Women and men both feel. Women and men both think. It is their manner of looking at the world and their self-expression that makes the difference. A woman's first reaction will generally be an emotional one followed by a thinking one. The man's first reaction will be a thinking one, but he will also feel. Because the woman was created to be more attuned emotionally, she feels everything, from the way a person looks at her to what a person is saying or doing. This is a natural response for her, because she was made to feel the world around her and within her. For example, a woman will be looking forward to a romantic evening with her husband that they had planned. She will prepare the food, set the table, arrange the flowers, maybe even polish the silverware, and then meet him at the door when he comes home. Her husband walks in, says, "Hello," then strides right past her without noticing that she is dressed up. Instead of going to the table, he goes into the living room and says, "I'm going to have dinner in front of the TV while I watch the news." His mind is still in work mode. He is intent on finding out any information that may affect his work and thus his ability to provide for his wife and family. However, because his wife doesn't understand this, she's deeply hurt at his behavior. Her first reaction is to feel that he is ungrateful, inconsiderate, and totally heartless. So she goes into the living room and approaches him angrily. He asks, "What's the matter with you?" At this point, she sees nothing complimentary in the way he is designed. When we don't understand purpose, we begin to misinterpret motives. It is this suspicion that creates conflict. This is why understanding purpose and design is so important. Both the woman's reaction and the man's reaction are related to the way they are made. She took his apparent indifference personally, while his mind was preoccupied with what he was thinking, so that he did not notice what his wife was feeling. When women and men understand that the female man is an emotional feeler and that the male man is a logical thinker, they can understand how to use their differences for the betterment of them both. The point is that the distinct differences between women and men are meant to be a help to them, not a hindrance or a source of pain. One way of thinking and communicating is not better than the other way, and the inherent differences between the two are not a result of the fall. The way women and men are designed is for their good. They just need to exercise patience and understanding and to value the other's contribution. Self-expression. A woman can generally express her feelings and thoughts better than a man can. Most women love to talk because of God's purpose for them. God designed the woman to communicate what is going on in her heart and mind. Because a man talks less than a woman does, he can sometimes give her the impression that he is not doing much thinking. Men think quite a bit. However, they often don't express their thoughts. And when they do, they express only the most salient points because they are interested in facts rather than details. This is why a man can walk into the house and bypass a beautifully set table his wife has prepared and not say anything about it. The man needs help in switching his focus from linear thinking about his goals and work to an appreciation of the sensory and emotional aspects of life. Then he can notice and appreciate what his wife has done for him. He also needs to learn to articulate what he appreciates and feels. The woman, on her part, needs to understand that when the man walks by her table without saying anything, it doesn't necessarily mean that he is being inconsiderate. It means that he is in a linear frame of mind because this is his natural mindset. Do men really have emotions? Contrary to what many women believe, men do have emotions. They just don't always express them, either because it is more difficult for them to, or because their thinking rather than their emotions is at the forefront of what they are engaged in. It all goes back to purpose. God designed the man with the capacity to focus on the cold, hard facts of a situation. Why? It is because he was created first, and in that position was designed to lead. A leader can't afford to base his decisions on emotion, especially in a crisis. Remember, we're talking about general tendencies. This doesn't mean that a woman can't lead. However, when she does, she often has to balance her emotions with the facts in order to make the best decisions. Moreover, her instincts can serve her well in this capacity. I've observed that the way a man acts when he receives information from a woman can make her angry. Suppose she says, "The mortgage is due and we're behind in our payments." He says, "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." His wife says, "But you don't understand what I said. We don't have any money and they're coming to get the furniture." He replies, "I know. I said I'll take care of it." The woman phones her mother, cousin, and aunt to tell them about her situation, but the man seems almost nonchalant about it. The woman could interpret his response to mean that he doesn't care, yet all this time he's been thinking about what he's going to do. She is feeling, he is thinking. He is formulating all kinds of schemes in his head about how he can get the money. Since a female is an emotional feeler, she is generally led or motivated by her emotions, even though she also thinks. Yet a male is led or motivated by his thinking because of his leadership and provider responsibilities. There are times when a woman isn't feeling what a man is thinking, and a man is not thinking what a woman is feeling. When this happens, the lack of communication between them compounds their frustration with one another. Men need to learn to tell women what they are thinking and feeling. Again, when the man walks past the beautifully laid dinner table, he has to remember to express his feelings. At the same time, the woman shouldn't consider his unemotional response as being either irresponsible or inconsiderate. A perfect balance. The man generally bases his thoughts and actions on what is logical. He factually analyzes everything. This is both a strength and a weakness because emotions and insights are very important to a person's functioning in the world. Therefore, the man needs someone who can balance his logic with feeling. Otherwise, he'll go through life with merely a cold, logical outlook. He needs someone who can show him the emotional side of life, who can remind him of his need to be sensitive to others. I appreciate God's design. He designed things in such a way that females and males need one another. The female was created to help the man in that whatever the male lacks, the female has. The female's emotional feeling will balance the male's logical thinking. Many women don't understand how important they are to the men in their lives. What the male man lacks, the female man possesses. The reverse is also true. This principle is based on God's purpose. Whatever God drew out of Adam to make Eve, the man needs in order to be complete. There are qualities in the woman that God took out of the man at creation that a man needs. Women's insight and discernment. There is an interesting example of this truth in the incident where Pilate judged Jesus. Pilate was carrying out his job, the administration of Roman authority over the Jews. When the chief priest brought Jesus before Pilate and accused him of being an insurrectionist, Pilate's first inclination was to try to rule within the law. He saw no basis for their accusations and wanted to release Jesus. In the middle of this dispute, Pilate's wife sent a warning to him. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message: "Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." Matthew 27:19. In essence, she was saying, I have a premonition about this man. He didn't do anything wrong. Don't touch him. She was trying to appeal to Pilate's sensibilities, warning him that he should use discretion and discernment when making his decision. Pilate became nervous that things were getting out of hand when the religious leaders assembled an unruly crowd to demand that Jesus be crucified. He ended up being swayed by this pressure and ordering Jesus' death. He may have justified his decision by telling himself that it was logical, keeping order for Rome and making things easier for himself should take precedence over preserving the life of one innocent man. Even though Pilate knew Jesus had done nothing wrong, he had him crucified. He would have done better to have listened to the instincts of his wife. Men need to learn to be open to communication from their wives and from the other women in their lives. God gave females to males so that men can have balance, so that they can have the benefit of women's sensitivity and feeling. It is very easy for men to make a decision and not care what anyone thinks about it or who will be affected by it. This is why it is good for a man to have that other part of him that says, what you are planning to do may be right, but the way you intend to go about it is wrong. Perhaps you should consider this. The account of Abigail in 1 Samuel 25 is a good example of how a woman's discernment averted disaster for a man. Abigail combined intelligence and insight to address a deadly situation. Her husband, Nabal, had rejected David's request for food after David and his men had been honorable with Nabal and had even protected his property. Nabal wasn't using wisdom, but his own form of logic and pride when he rebuffed David. See verses 10 through 11. David was angry at the way he was treated and was going to destroy Nabal and then the men who worked for him. Abigail went to David and appealed to his sense of justice and righteousness before God and his compassion. Her insights and good judgment kept David from destroying her husband and his men. Abigail is also a good example of someone who understood how to communicate with another based on a knowledge of the other person's outlook. She knew what to say to David that would get his attention, resonate with his deepest convictions, and get through to him. Men's head over heart perspective. Men's logical thinking can also provide balance to women's emotional feeling. There are times when your heart can lead in one direction and your head in another. Sometimes making the best overall decision requires that you go with your head. If you're a leader during a crisis, you don't have much time to have an emotional experience. You need to be able to think. Our emotions can make it difficult for us to think clearly. After the Israelites had been freed from Egypt and were approaching the Red Sea, Pharaoh chased after them with his army. When the Israelites saw the Egyptians coming after them, they panicked and accused Moses of luring them to their deaths. Yet Moses exercised leadership when he didn't give in to their panic, but rather said, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Exodus 14:13 through 14. You need only to be still, Moses was saying. Instead of letting your emotions control you, instead of running around like chickens with your heads cut off, stay still and trust the Lord. After Moses had gotten everyone under control and everything in order, then he went to talk to the Lord. The man is the way he is because of what he has to do to exercise leadership. What the woman says expresses how she feels. What a woman says in an expression is an expression of what she feels. while what a man says is an expression of what he thinks. The woman has thoughts and the man has feelings. However, a woman will more likely express what she feels, and a man will more likely express what he thinks. They are communicating two completely different levels of information. The woman's hidden thoughts. When a woman is under stress and wants someone to empathize with her so that she doesn't feel so alone in her difficulty, she may say something to her husband like, "Your parents are coming for dinner tomorrow. The house is a mess. We don't have any groceries. The kids have been underfoot all day and I just can't do it all." Her husband, who is a thinker, will immediately try to come up with a solution for his distraught wife. "Well, what if I go buy some groceries?" "No, I have to do that tomorrow when I know what I want to cook." "Then why don't I take you and the kids out to dinner so you won't have to worry about that tonight?" "No, we can't be out late. The kids need baths, and besides, I have to use up the leftovers." "Well then, let me straighten things up a little." "No, I need to do that. I know where everything belongs." By now, the man is totally exasperated because he's trying to help his wife, but she's rejecting all of his suggestions. He doesn't realize that what the woman really wants is for him to take her in his arms and tell her how much she is appreciated. While she would also probably appreciate his help, she first needs emotional contact with him so that she can be emotionally stabilized. Then she will be able to tackle the other problems and they won't seem as insurmountable. What she was thinking was that she could handle things if she received some love and affection from her husband. What she expressed was her overwhelming feelings of overload and fatigue, which her husband interpreted as a need for him to solve her problems by taking action. A woman doesn't always tell a man what she is thinking. When she starts to become emotional, he needs to be patient and try to work through her emotions to find out what she's thinking. Sometimes he has to dig deep to find out what is actually on her mind, because what a woman is thinking is often different from what she is saying. This process can take patience on the part of the man because he wants just the facts and likes to quickly arrive at the bottom line. A woman is thinking on a variety of levels, however, and it takes her longer to process all these details and arrive at a conclusion. For example, a man asks his wife, "Honey, are you still planning to serve dinner at 6 o'clock? She hesitates for a moment and then says, "I still have to mash the potatoes and make the gravy." "Oh," her husband will say, "then what time will we be eating?" "Well, I also need to warm the rolls." "Okay," he says with growing patience, "but what time are we going to eat?" "It depends on what time the roast finishes," she answers, and Susan said she might not arrive until 6:15. "Are we or are we not eating at 6 o'clock? He says between clenched teeth. Pause. "No, it'll be 6:30. That's all I wanted to know," he says wearily as he walks away. He wanted a yes or no answer, but she was thinking on many levels and first had to work through all the many details of meal preparation and scheduling to see whether or not she could serve the meal at 6 o'clock. A man's hidden feelings. Most of the time when a man speaks to a woman, he doesn't tell her what he's feeling. The misunderstanding this causes is what contributes to problems in relationships. For example, I've counseled many couples in which the woman doesn't understand the man's nature. He doesn't care about me. He doesn't tell me he loves me. He's indifferent. In her experience, this explanation seems true. But all the while, the man really feels deeply. Notice that I said feels. He feels deeply for her. The problem is that he doesn't say what he is feeling. He says what he is thinking. Note the difference. In his heart, he feels great love for his wife. But in his mind, This love is not always translated into specific words that he can share with her. Facts and figures are what comes to his mind. He can be feeling love and enjoying his wife's company, but what comes into his head, which he communicates to her, may be the latest business report or a news item. This is why a woman becomes incredulous when she shares a romantic moment with a man and the man suddenly starts talking about needing to balance his checkbook. Do you remember the story of the woman who asked her husband, "Do you still love me?" And he replied, "I told you that the day we got married, and it still applies. I'll let you know if I ever change my mind." His response sounds horrible. He shouldn't have said that. However, what he was basically saying was that he doesn't share his feelings very easily and that it had been hard for him to express them in the first place. Men have to start learning to communicate their feelings to women. The Word of God says that men are to treat women with consideration. Husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives and treat them with respect. 1 Peter 3:7. Men need to treat their wives with sensitivity based on a knowledge of what their wives need so that they can continually replenish these needs. I've seen it to be true that the happier the women are, the happier the men are. As one enlightened male said, "When Jane happy, Tarzan happy." It can be difficult for women to understand how very hard it is for men to express their feelings. Yet it is very important for a woman not to come to any conclusions about a man's motivations until she discovers what he is feeling. There are many men who are feeling emotions that they have difficulty verbalizing. They are hurting. They feel sad and weak inside. They feel like losers. They are depressed that they haven't been promoted for 10 years and that nothing is working out with their jobs. They feel as if they have failed their wives. They feel bad, but it is hard for them to come up with the words to express their feelings. A woman needs to learn to create an environment that will enable a man to tell her what he is feeling. When she works through his thinking, she will find out what he is feeling, and she will discover that what he is feeling is often very different from what he has been saying. If women and men are not careful, they will come to conclusions about each other's motivations without knowing what the woman is really thinking or what the man is really feeling. This has caused many people to think that their marriage or relationship isn't working. After a while, they say, "Forget this," and they walk away from the relationship. Later on, they meet somebody else and get married, hoping things will be different from this time. However, they encounter the same problems as in their previous relationships. They think the problem is with the other person, when the problem is often with the communication. This cycle will continue until they learn to work through and understand the differences between women and men, why each is unique, and how God has made them to beautifully complement one another. Once again, this cycle will continue until they learn to work through and understand the differences between women and men, why each is unique, and how God has made them to beautifully complement one another. What the woman hears is an emotional experience for her. In addition to having different communication styles relating to what they speak about, females and males also have different styles in the way they hear what is said to them. What a woman hears is received by her as an emotional experience, while what a man hears is received by him merely as information. They have two entirely different ways of processing language that is spoken to them. A man doesn't have an emotional experience with what he hears. This is why it is very important for the man to understand the woman. The woman receives language in an emotional way because she is designed to absorb the world around her and to personalize it. She's designed to take in everything and incubate it. Remember the example from an earlier chapter that if you tell a woman you're ugly and say the same thing to a man, you'll get a different response from each? The man will probably look at you and say you're ugly too. However, the woman will never forget you as long as you live and might even consider hiring someone to assassinate you. Before a man speaks to a woman, he needs to think about what he is about to say and how he is about to say it. Because a woman receives everything as an emotional experience, it is very important for a man to be sensitive about her feelings. He needs to communicate his word. He needs to consider his words rather than saying whatever comes to his mind. He may tell his wife, that dress is getting a little tight for you, a little tight on you. For weeks she will be quiet. She won't speak to him. Then one day her pent-up feelings will have reached a breaking point so that she has to release them. She'll call a friend at 6 o'clock in the morning, crying over what her husband said to her. Her husband will hear her crying and will come and ask her, "What's the matter, honey?" "You tell me I'm fat, then you ask me what's the matter?" "I didn't say you were fat." "Yes, you did." What a man tells a woman will be absorbed by her entire being. If he tells her, that rice was a little salty today, as far as he's concerned, he's giving her information. It was salty, yet she can hear all kinds of things in that statement. He just told her she can't cook. His mother's rice was better. He's not appreciative. When she thinks about it later, she starts to wonder if he's been with somebody else who can cook better than she can. The idea grows within her. He had lunch with someone at the office. He wants to leave her, and that's why he isn't eating her food any longer. It gets very personal. 3 weeks later, they're in a restaurant, and the man says, "Now this is good rice." He's dumbfounded when she says in response, "You didn't think my rice was good 3 weeks ago, did you? I'm getting out of here. I'm not eating with you anymore." They have a big fight over what? Differences in communication. He thinks it's information. She feels it personal. How a man hears language. On the other hand, a woman needs to realize that when she talks to a man, he hears it only as information. He runs on information because he's a logical thinker. When she wants to talk to a man, she has to learn to tell him what she thinks, not what she feels. Sometimes a woman will become upset at something that a man has done and will start crying. Again, a woman needs to release her emotions, and she often expresses them through tears. However, the man says, "I'm going to leave. I'll come back when you've settled down and we can talk." To a woman, he's being cold. What he's really saying is, "I'm looking for information and I'm not receiving any. There's no reason for me to be here." So he goes away for a while and then comes back and asks, "Are you ready to talk now?" He doesn't understand that the woman has been trying to communicate something to him through her emotions. Because his response is related to his design, a woman needs to work with the equipment the way it's made. She can sit down and say, "Honey, I have something to say to you. I did not appreciate, and it really made me feel less valued by you when you did not open the door for me tonight in front of our friends. I know you didn't do it intentionally, but it is important for others to know that you respect me. I love you very much, and I want to be as dignified as possible to make you proud." A man wants a woman's information. He doesn't want her tears because he doesn't know how to respond to them. This is a serious point of difference and conflict between women and men. The woman cries, but the man cannot feel her tears. He feels sorry that she is crying, but he wants to know what he can do to fix things. He wants information. The woman is interested in the particulars. Another point of difference between females and males is that women are generally interested in the details, in the particulars of things, while men are usually interested in what is abstract, the principles or the philosophy related to something. Similarly, when it comes to memory, women tend to remember the details and men tend to remember the essence of the matter. This is why, after attending a wedding, for example, a woman can talk on the phone with a friend for hours discussing all the details of the event, such as the flowers, the music, what the bride wore, and what kind of food was served at the reception. When a man is asked, "How was the wedding?" he may get a blank look on his face and then simply say, "They got married." The woman always remembers. A final aspect of the differences between the communication styles of women and men is that women don't usually forget things, while men generally have to be reminded over and over. Here again, where purpose is not known, people start to become suspicious of others' motives. The woman may bring up a previous wrong she experienced, and the man will think, "What's the matter with her? I did that 5 years ago, and now she's bringing it up again. I told her I was sorry. I asked her for forgiveness. This happened 5 years ago. Why won't she forget it?" He's angry at her natural inclination not to forget things, yet that is the way she is made. She is designed not to forget. Now, a man may remember facts related to his business, but often he will not remember dates and times and events. For example, a woman may be dressing for an evening out and call to her husband who is in another room, "You remember that we're going to your sister's birthday party tonight, don't you?" The man will have completely forgotten. He's wearing the oldest clothes he owns and holding a big bowl of popcorn, getting ready to watch the big game. She comes into the room and says, "What are you doing?" "I wanted to watch the game." "Do we have to go out?" "I reminded you 3 times about this party. Why can't you remember anything?" Most men don't know the reason why women remember things, and most women can't understand why men don't recall things. It has to do with their purpose and design. Men tend to think about goals and the bottom line, while women tend to remember details. These differences are complementary. However, they can be the source of serious problems in a relationship because when you don't understand the purpose of something, you can become suspicious of it. You can begin to suspect the person you're dealing with of having ulterior motives. Let the peace of Christ rule. I would like to close this chapter with a reminder that we are all in the process of learning to be like Christ, of learning how to become what God originally intended for us to be when He created males and females. While we're still in that learning curve, it is important for us to be patient, kind, and considerate with one another's failings, as well as distinct communication styles. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive whatever grievances you may have against one another. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace. Colossians 3:12 through 15. Understanding that God designed females and males with different communication styles will go a long way to helping us bear with one another in love. I try not to allow others' actions to cause a reaction in me because I am aware of people's motivations and communication styles. Instead of a reaction, I give them a response. To react is to take action against someone else before thinking. To respond is to act responsibly in your dealings with others because you understand their motivations and circumstances. A reacting person does what is irresponsible by becoming angry or resentful at another's behavior, but a responding person takes responsibility by seeking to understand the other person and by speaking the truth in love. Ephesians 4:15. Jesus understood people thoroughly, and He also knew who He was. Understanding the nature of others and yourself is crucial to maintaining right relationships and not falling prey to selfishness, pride, resentment, or bitterness, which sow seeds of conflict with others. As redeemed women and men, we are called to peace with one another. What Paul wrote about the reconciliation that Christ brought applies to the male-female relationship. For he himself is our peace, who has made the two one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility. Ephesians 2:14. Principles. God made women and men different in the way they think, act, and respond. The woman is an emotional feeler. The man is a logical thinker. The different communication styles of women and men are meant to be complementary. A woman does not need to apologize for her emotions because God designed her to feel. When women and men understand the differences in their communication styles, they can learn how to use their differences for the betterment of them both. What a woman speaks is an expression of what she feels. What a man thinks is an expression of what he thinks. A woman receives what she hears as an emotional experience. A man receives what he hears as information. Women are interested in the concrete details, while men are interested in abstract ideas. Similarly, when it comes to memory, women tend to remember the details and men tend to remember the essence of the matter. Women don't forget, but men have to be reminded again and again. Colossians 3:12 through 15 shows us how to bear with one another's different communication styles. This is the end of chapter 9. We will continue with chapter 10 and another session. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you, and see you later.